viewers, and welcome to FinCrimeTV. This is Chinwags with the Old Codgers Club. I'm Julia Chin. In this program, I want to talk about fraud and scams. I want to jump right into it without going into the technicalities of defining what is fraud and what is scam. So, Nigel, given your background, why do people fall for scams?
I think I do want to be a little bit technical about that and just explain that the term scam is just a slang term. It's pushed about because it's kind of user-friendly, and it means that ordinary people think they know what they're talking about, but actually a scam is a fraud. The correct term is fraud. That's the term that's in all the legislation. It's what people are charged with. And so we should really talk about fraud and not talk about scams, because it's just a way of causing some confusion. Why do people commit fraud? Because it's an easy route to easy money, in most cases. Why do people fall for fraud? Lots of different reasons. The first of the reasons is that the fraudster's skill is in identifying something that people want, or convincing them that they want something, and then, if in effect, charging them a lot of money for it. I mean, there's lots of alternatives to that, but ultimately it's getting someone to give up something in return for something that they think they need, generally. Why do people fall for it? Because fraudsters are very clever. There are many different approaches to fraud, which range from simply picking up the phone and saying, I'm your new computer engineer, and we've identified a problem on your computer, so give me your credit card and I'll fix it for you, through to people who send an email saying, I'm the prince of somewhere or other, and I've got $450 million that I want to put in your bank account because I can't put it in my own because the government would notice. And amazingly, people fall for that without realizing that not only is it bound to be a fraud, but it's also an invitation to take part in money laundering. So why do people do it? Sometimes because they're not paying attention. Little old ladies, where the fraudster turns up on their doorstep and says, you've got a hole in your roof and I can fix it for you. And then if she agrees to that, once a week for the next however many weeks, different fraudsters will turn up with different things that they say that are needed. So there's that, the straightforward confidence trick. Believe me, I can do something for you. There is the plea to greed, the advanced fee frauds, like the $450 million with the with the Nigerian prince. You help me and I will give you 10%. Who's going to turn that down? Well, the answer is there are judges, lawyers, there's a mayor in the UK. There are all kinds of people who should know better who have been caught by exactly that fraud. So there's the people who are greedy, and then there's the people who are just plain stupid. And there are some stupid people. And we scratch our heads and wonder how people can be so unbelievably dim. But the answer is there are dim people. And if the fraudster can find someone who's dim, that's fine. Having said all of that, most victims of fraud are victims. They are not dim. They are not stupid. They are simply not as bright or as alert as the fraudster. Des, you've been chuckling away at that because you don't think victims are stupid, or you do?
I think there's a couple of things. Yes, even in conversations we've had earlier, talk about vulnerable people, and the vulnerable people are not people over 60 years old. Vulnerable people are vulnerable emotionally as well, and that's why you get some of these various attempts at somebody falling in love with somebody they've never met on the internet, and then the conversation gets to finance. Now, for me, many victims seem to say that afterwards, looking back, it was obvious it was a scam. I wanted it to be true, and I didn't read and I didn't understand it until it was too late. I'm so embarrassed. Similarly, how often have you heard the victim saying, I'm so angry with myself as well as the scammer for believing it. So vulnerability is not about age, as far as I'm concerned. It's about emotional state at the time, and the scammers. I've seen some of the scripts that are used by these professional scammers that have been caught. They are very, very good. It's not the individuals that are doing the scamming, because the other side of that is half of them are probably trafficked people and being forced to do work in these call centers that are scamming people. But the scripts are very, very good, and it's based on, for me, it's about the psychology. I'd start. I would, before I talk about the psychology quickly, if you don't mind, I would say that I'm pleased that I've got a phobia, and that phobia is something called sugrophobia, which is the fear or anxiety of being duped or exploited, which seems to be the opposite of people who are so confident that they can't be, that they know it all, because even professionals are being duped into investment schemes, etc., etc. Now, the psychological side of it, which is what I'm more interested in, which is why I say there may be people who've less educated in the financial side of things or whatever, but the psychological triggers that they use, really, as far as I can see, are three things. Number one, there's the time pressure call or email. You know, I've had the tax man saying I've got to pay him money straight away and call this number, and I'm going, no way. Secondly, there's this trust and authority bias. If it's coming from a bank, if it's coming from a police officer or a member of the government or somebody in a position of authority, human nature is to trust authority and obey their instructions. That's the manipulative side of it. And the third one goes down to greed. And in my, I would call it, whether you want to call it status or whatever, it's the fear of missing out sometimes. Exploit basic human desires and needs, greed, fear. And we know that some of these scams also go down to, for the victim to avoid the threat of physical pain. But also, you've got an awful lot of people, vulnerable people, who have a desire to be liked. So
I think that's, you're right about that. My mom, she's in her 80s. She had twice been scammed. One was what Nigel mentioned, the example of, you know, someone comes to offer to help fix something in the house, and she actually opened the door because, yes, coincidentally, she did need something fixed, and the guy just went off with 100 ringgit and never came back. And the other one was, she was in the market. A young man came up to her and said, "Hey, auntie, you know, do you remember me? I'm somebody's son, your neighbor. You know, we used to live in the same area 20 years ago. Do you still recognize me?" That kind of familiarity that takes people off guard. So I see, Mark, you're nodding your head.
Absolutely. I'm going to push back a little on what Nigel is saying. I'm going to agree 90% with what Des is saying, and I'm going to extend my sympathy for what you've been saying. And I'm going to start from a couple of different places. One is the Descartesian approach to fraud. I think, therefore I scam, which is the use of criminality, and particularly the internet, has lowered the barrier to mass attempts to fraudulently, you know, I am a Nigerian prince and your hamster exploded at 30,000 feet and it's left you $45 million. All the sort of stuff, good stuff that Nigel was talking about there. And all you need is one person to fall for it. And you can then, as you rightly said, my colleagues rightly said, it gets passed into a system of, from the original scammer to a new scammer to a police scammer, blah, 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 all the way down the line. But the other thing about fraud and scamming is it's an intensely personal failure for some people. Doctors, highly intelligent professionals under a lot of time pressure has been mentioned, click the wrong thing, think they've done either the right thing or haven't noticed that the name in the bank email has got a Russian O in it, as opposed Cyrillic O in it, as opposed to a European O, and therefore it's not actually the website of the bank, and blah 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 blah. They're very good frauds out there. The other bit I actually want to come down to with my disagreement here is that there is a difference between fraud and scamming, and the banks are pushing it today. If you have a look at, for example, the HSBC UK website, they talk about fraud being suspicious activity as defined by them, where you didn't know about it and didn't authorize it, unauthorized use of credit cards, bank account takeover, identity theft. But they then say scam, well, that's where you're persuaded to buy a fake item, or you authorize a push payment, instructions to transfer money to another account, fake investment opportunities. Now, why is a major bank doing that? Because on one of them, they're on the hook in the UK for paying for fraudulent losses, and on the other, it's on the head of the victim. So I think we are going to see more definitions of fraud and scam flocking our way, whilst, and I have to put in an anti-government bit every now and then, but in the UK, we gave up fighting scams and frauds and jailing people for them years ago. And therefore, from a criminal's point of view, who want to exploit the intelligent, who want to exploit and just access their money in the fastest possible way, this is a low risk. I mean, say, you know, on a risk adjusted basis, this is a great form of crime, because in the UK, we just go, huh, banks will pay for it.
Oh, that's Nigel chuckling away this time. Nigel, back to you.
I adopt a legalistic approach rather than a PR approach, which is why I say that scams are all scams are frauds. I do understand that there is an advantage to some people in separating those two things out, and I think it's very undesirable from a society's point of view to allow them to do that. At the weekend, I was at a dinner where one of the guests was in the middle of being a victim of an investment scam fraud. She hadn't been stupid. She had only invested £1 million rupiah, which is about 50 quid, just to see what went on. And her daughter had said, don't give them any more money, no matter what they do, no matter what they say, don't give them any more money. And I said, let me guess what happens. You gave them $1 million. They came back instantly and said, if you give us another $1 million, we can add it and it will grow faster. She said, yes, same day. I said, okay, so what happened then? She said, well, I told them no. And then nothing's happened for 2 months. I said, so your money's gone. And she wasn't sure about this because the scammers are using the name of a large, reputable digital asset exchange. And they're even using their logo on the Telegram account. I said, well, let's prove it. We know that business doesn't operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Let's send them a Telegram message and see how quick it is to get a response. It was about 5 minutes. Now let's tell them that we've not heard for 2 months. Can we have a statement? And you won't get it. You'll get an excuse as to why a statement can't be made. Your money is being rolled over into something or some other such thing. And that's exactly what happened. Within 20 minutes, they had decided that this woman was too much trouble, had closed the Telegram account, and or blocked her off it or whatever. They deleted all the messages between her and there, and they've just disappeared. So it's the interesting thing here is the credibility that was given to this this fraud by using the name of an existing company, promoting it on Instagram, thank you Facebook, and then allowing the use of the logo and the name on Telegram, and then the ability to delete at a moment's notice all the evidence off Telegram. So these are the issues that are particularly interesting from that point of view. If we look at why she did it, it was a bit of a lark for the sake of £50. Who cares? But other people in similar scams have lost many, many, many tens of thousands of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds. And again, exactly the same system, picked it up off social media, ran it through Telegram. They've just disappeared, and there is no record of who they were dealing with. But I have a bank account, so I haven't given up yet, and I know where the money went. I know whose name it went into, and we're having a look at it. It's only 50 quid, but let's just cause some trouble, shall we?
Well done.
Yes. Yes. You have
Yes.
something to say.
Yeah, I mean, the banks are just as liable to, I think, as Nigel said, they what was it, Mark? Some call it fraud. Then they go into scams, and then they try and protect you, and it just makes people weary rather than wary of what's going on. Again, with some of the stuff that I've looked at, in terms of the psychology, victims tend to view money as money and wealth as a sign of success. That's one side, but it's also very, very cultural. To them, acquiring wealth is an important achievement in life. Again, can be cultural. But these victims, more than likely, in what I've looked at over the last few years, have habits that signal, that clearly give a signal to the scammers that they are potential targets. These are the people that are likely to receive and respond to unsolicited telephone calls. These are the people that would respond to mails, email regarding investment opportunities. It's finding that weak point, as far as I'm concerned. And one of the things that I had been involved in recently was looking at the perceptions of the fraudster and the scams associated with financial loss. And nearly all of it was down to the fact that the victims said that, as I mentioned before, the person seemed official. I was under time pressure. I thought the person was nice. I was worried about missing out on an opportunity. They seemed to know personal details about me. This is for a subject, another lesson, because that falls into very interesting conversations. I had an opportunity to get ahead financially. That the feeling that people deserve to win sometimes, I think, or even I had an opportunity to correct my old mistakes. I wanted to please the person I was dealing with, and then the dark one was I was afraid of being punished, because that's when the threats come in and things like that. The con artists work to trigger emotional reactions amongst potential victims, and it's, as I said again, it's very different types of emotional. Maybe, yes, the cliche is the older people are susceptible to fraud when emotions are high, but many younger people are. An analysis of the average age, I think it was done by OECD, said that the average age of the victims was late 40s. So again, it's not an age thing, it's an emotional thing. It doesn't matter whether the emotion is positive or negative, it triggers something. And so therefore, perception amongst everybody, and again, I know Nigel mentioned it, is that negative views associated with the victims contributes to that person's reluctance to admit that they've been scammed. So there's an awful layer of stuff we don't know about. I just wanted to say that, Nigel, and I still disagree with you that they're stupid, although stupid is as stupid does, and it is a factor in there.
No, not all people are stupid. I mean, I was being very clear. It's only some of them. The ones who everybody must know that no Nigerian prince is going to give them $450 million. If you go along with that, you're pretty stupid. But there are elements where you've really got to be incredibly thick to get caught up in it in the first place. But then the vast majority of it, as I also said at the beginning, is not people being stupid. It's because fraudsters are very manipulative and very clever, and they identify their targets very, very quickly. And I agree with what you both said about the availability of the internet being a primary driver. And given that, I'm surprised that the average age is so high. I would have perhaps those are old to make more reports, but given that the victims are likely to be picked up on social media even more than they are through email these days, I would have thought that the average age would have dropped significantly. So I have no data for that. It just surprises me. Mark, you were lifting your hands up earlier.
Yeah. So
There
let me just. That's right, Nigel. I think in Asia, the average age is in the early 20s. Okay, back to you, Mark.
I was just going to say there is a particular kind of fraudster that, like the human traffickers, really gets my goat, and those are the ones who use large tragedies to create fake personas to receive handouts from government. And I'm thinking here of, there's a particularly vile one who used the attack on the Twin Towers to make claims, multiple claims, I think, for loss and grief of families. And then there's also one in the Grenfell Tower, which is where a domestic tower block went up in flames when its cladding went up. And they deliberately go out to raise funds for themselves illegally whilst trading on everybody's grief and wanting to take care of the weak. Those are the ones that get me in particular. And for them, it shouldn't be a case of a rap on the wrists. The other thing, which I do agree with what everybody else has been saying, is there are a cadre of people who are trying to do the right thing, who are trying to be decent human beings, who are being taken by fraudsters. And therefore, I have no sympathy with these criminals whatsoever, because they're actually attacking the fundamentals of what it is to be human, to reach out and to help people. And they will look at natural disasters and go, how can I make money out of it? No. Those people should be caught and punished.
There is an organization here that has just had all its bank accounts frozen and a large amount of money within that frozen that has been found to be, or is alleged to have collected money for Palestinians and misappropriated or in some way not dealt with it properly. The case is very new. It's not very much information about it. But it appears to be, on the face of it at least, yet another charity or pseudo-charity scam saying we are here to help, send us money, and then it doesn't end up where people think it's going. But if we're going to do that, then we should look at Oxfam. And I name Oxfam because all those little envelopes they put through the doors at this time of year, so grannies put part of their pension in them, the pictures with the children with the flies in their eyes and things, that money, if you look at Oxfam's accounts, does not go where those grannies think it's going. That the money that goes for that almost entirely comes from various governments, and Oxfam in fact spends its donations and the money it raises in its charity shops on what it calls advocacy. That's not what the money is given for.
With that, we close this episode.